This video is about repairing a 1986 Firebird hatch pull-down assembly. Shown is the 1988 schematic diagram, which shows a real simplified box with one wire going in, and that's it. Doesn't help you much when you're troubleshooting. So you might ask, what about the 1986 factory manual? Well, as it turns out, the 1986 factory manual doesn't even list a hatch pull-down assembly under section 8A-135-0. It's not there. Nothing's there. No troubleshooting, anything. It's like it doesn't exist. The 1988 factory service manual troubleshooting page for the hatch pull-down system is shown below. This way you might find some useful information there that can help you. Therefore, I had to fully tear down my hatch pull-down system, examine each part, and do my own wiring diagram. So hopefully this will be useful for you. This video will demonstrate detailed information about what I found. I actually took apart relays and did what was necessary to see what was going on with this system. Not only do we explain the purpose and function of each part, but we also show where each part is located in the vehicle. So we hope this information will prove quite useful for you if you're trying to repair your hatch pull-down system. Here's a picture of the hatch pull-down assembly as removed from the vehicle. We'll point out the location of the major parts. First of all, the motor assembly is located right here. It converts the motor rotary action into a linear action, which moves the hatch latch up and down. Next we have the relay connector, the infamous relay connector. The relay does nothing. That's located right here. And then we have the motor switch, which determines whether the motor should go up or should go down. And last but not least, we have the hatch latch. And this slides on this assembly here. Now, there's plastic inserts in this slide system, so those plastic inserts can be destroyed by people slamming the hatch without letting the motor pull it down. So that's a common problem, failure of the nylon slides. But basically, this is the entire hatch pull-down system. Here we have a picture of the rear view of the hatch pull-down assembly. First, we want to point out there's a latched, unlatched switch located right here. That's the name I gave it because it has no name. It basically senses when the latch is latched and unlatched. Gives electrical feedback. Next here you can see the link which connects back to the motor assembly and moves the bottom portion of the slide up and down, which is the hatch latch assembly. And then we mentioned earlier about the useless relay connector. There's also a white wire there which provides power from a fuse up in the front of the vehicle. If we flip the assembly back over again, you can see where the motor switch wire plugs on. And here's a close-up view of that area. If you look closely, you can see the link arm which moves the hatch latch assembly up and down, which is driven by the motor assembly. This hatch latch arm has two tabs on it. One tab moves the motor switch to the up position. The other tab moves the motor switch to the down position. This provides feedback for the hatch latch position. If you look closely, you'll see Dremel cuttings into the top of the switch. We tried to cut the side open to get in there and spray to make it work. That didn't work out. So instead we cut off all the rivets. There's 4 rivets. You notice we have 256 bolts and nuts to replace the rivets. So a 256 is what you need to replace those rivets when you put it back together. So let's take a close look at my wiring diagram. You notice we have the latched unlatched switch, which we saw earlier. And we also have the motor switch. And outside of the motor switch we have the thermal reset motor. That just means the motor, if it gets overheated, will shut off till it cools down. All these components are located inside the hatch pull-down assembly. Notice that here we have a connector view looking at the switch, the motor switch, and that represents the 4 pins shown here on the left side of the motor switch. Because this motor switch is the most common electrical failure of the hatch pull-down assembly, let's open up the motor switch and look inside and see what we have there. Here's an outside view of the motor switch shown in the down position, which is the same as the previous schematic. Here's a side view of the motor switch top cover, and also looking down on the top cover, you notice there's a spring in there, and that spring's what activates the switch slider. Of course, our top cover has a hole cut in it. We tried to get in with a Dremel tool, but trust me, it's not worth the effort. It doesn't work. Here's a picture of the motor switch with the top cover removed. Notice the two brass pins at the top. Those are the wires that go to the motor itself. The switch snaps onto the motor. The motor pins are not any of these 4 pins in the schematic diagram. They're separate pins. Then a slider slides. If you notice, there's a track on each side of this switch. There's a slider that slides in there. It shorts out different portions of the switch to make the motor run forwards or in reverse. Here's a side view of the slider switch assembly. Notice there's a rail on each side. It sets down in the rails inside the switch, and it moves up and down on the previous switch picture. We also have a down view of the slider so you can see the actual contacts. This motor switch would actually raise the hatch deck lid, but it wouldn't pull the hatch back down. It had to do with corroded contacts on this slider. This switch actuator spring is shown in the motor switch top assembly. It sets in a V groove down there in the bottom, and that V groove is connected to this motor switch part that sticks out. This motor switch part is moved by the tabs on the hatch latch mechanism as it moves up and down. And what this does, it changes the fulcrum of the bottom of the spring, which makes the slide left to right as the switch is activated. Here's another view of the slide, and the V is on the other side of it. It pushes, in this picture, it pushes the slide up against the bottom part of the switch. And as the lever moves, the slide snaps up or down in this particular picture view. So now we've covered everything inside the hatch pull-down assembly. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the schematic. Here we have a picture of the motor switch assembly to help you troubleshoot and measure pins on the motor assembly. Unfortunately, the 4-pin connector didn't show up very well. That is the 4 pins as shown in the schematic diagram. Notice this switch plugs right into the motor itself. The pin 1, pin 2, the switch plugs into the motor, and it's screwed to the motor assembly. And it tells you here in the view, motor switch view while plugged into the motor installed on the hatch. So that's the story on the picture of the motor switch. Next we will talk about the hatch release mechanism. As you can see, a 12-volt accessory fuse feeds a hatch release relay coil, and then there's a hatch release switch on the dash. When you press it, this coil energizes, puts a 12 volts accessory fuse over to the hatch mechanical release solenoid back at the back of the car. So that unlatches the hatch. Next we want to talk about this extend relay coil. This coil does absolutely nothing in this wiring diagram. I suspect that in future evolutions of this hatch pull-down assembly, that relay will be utilized. But right now, the relay socket itself is just a wire connection point. Notice the hatch power connector comes down, it's a blue wire. And if you look at pin 1 of the extended relay, it goes over to not connected inside the motor switch, so it doesn't do anything. You can never energize that coil. So I'm sure this coil has some future use. We just don't know what it is right now, and it's not necessary right now. The final discussion in this video will address our own how it works list of 8 items. If you read these 8 steps, it will show you exactly how this system works using this schematic. So this will help you determine how to troubleshoot fault problems. In general, we just did this so we could share with other people because it was so much trouble to do this. So we hope you find it useful and it improves your life.